Commander Laura Bennett was innocent. Everyone involved in destroying her knew she was innocent. The people who fabricated evidence against her, the people who prosecuted her, the people who convicted her. She wasn't a victim of corruption or incompetence. She was a deliberate sacrifice, a manufactured martyr, created by reformers, people who believed the military medical system was broken and needed a scandal dramatic enough to force change, people who decided that one innocent person's destruction was worth it. If it saved thousands of others, they chose Laura, framed her, destroyed her career and life, used her as a symbol to push through reforms that had been blocked for years, and it worked. Her case became a national scandal. Congress passed legislation. The system changed. Thousands of lives were improved, all built on the deliberate destruction of one innocent woman. This is a story about manufactured martyrs, about reformers who become villains, about the ends justifying the means, about discovering that your destruction was planned by people who thought they were heroes. Naval Hospital San Diego had serious problems: understaffing, overworked nurses, medication errors, patient safety incidents that were being covered up by administration. A group of 5 senior medical officers, 3 doctors, and 2 senior nurses had been trying to reform the system for years, filing reports, making requesting investigations. Nothing changed. The Navy's response was always, "We're reviewing your concerns. Changes take time. The system is functioning adequately." Meanwhile, patients were being harmed. Staff were burning out. The situation was deteriorating. Captain Michael Torres, Dr. Sarah Chen, Dr. Robert Nash, Commander Patricia Moore, and Commander Jennifer Webb. The 5 reformers met secretly. "We've been trying to fix this system for 5 years, Torres said. "Nothing works. Every report we file is ignored. Every recommendation is rejected. How many more patients need to be harmed before someone takes this seriously? The problem is we need something dramatic," Chen said. "Something the Navy can't ignore. Something that creates enough public pressure to force change." "Like what?" "A patient death. We've already had patient deaths. They're attributed to complications or underlying conditions. The system covers them up." Moore had an idea. "What if we created a scandal? Something so dramatic that Congress has to intervene. Something that exposes the system failures and forces accountability." "What kind of scandal?" "A medication diversion case, but not a real one. A manufactured one. We plant evidence that a nurse is stealing controlled substances. We make sure it gets investigated. We make sure it becomes public. And when the investigation reveals the system failures that allowed it to happen, the inadequate oversight, the poor staffing, the lack of accountability, we push for comprehensive reforms." Webb was uncomfortable. "That means destroying an innocent person's career." "Yes, but it saves hundreds of future patients. It protects hundreds of future staff members from burnout and unsafe conditions. One person's sacrifice to fix a broken system. That's not our decision to make, isn't it? We're senior medical officers. We have a responsibility to fix system failures. If the only way to do it is to create a crisis that forces change, then that's what we have to do." They debated for months. Eventually, they convinced themselves. One innocent person's destruction was worth it to save a broken system. They just needed to choose the right sacrifice. They spent weeks evaluating potential targets, needed someone whose case would be believable, but whose destruction would be dramatic enough to create change. "We need someone senior," Torres said. "A respected nurse with years of service. Someone whose downfall will be shocking, but not someone with powerful connections." Nash added, "We need someone who can't fight back effectively. Someone isolated enough that they won't have support." They reviewed personnel files, identified Commander Laura Bennett, 22 years of service, excellent record, respected by colleagues, but no family, divorced, no children, no political connections, no support network beyond work relationships. "She's perfect," Moore said. "Senior enough to make the case dramatic, isolated enough that she won't be able to mount effective defense." Webb still had doubts. "We're talking about destroying an innocent woman's life. We're talking about fixing a system that's destroying hundreds of lives," Torres countered. "Laura Bennett is one person. The system is failing constantly. If her sacrifice forces change, it's worth it. Does she get a choice? Of course not. If she knew, she'd refuse. And it wouldn't work if it wasn't a real case with a real conviction." They voted in favor. Webb abstained but didn't object. They chose Laura Bennett as their manufactured martyr. They spent 6 months building the case. Torres had administrative access to pharmacy systems. Chen had access to medication storage. Nash had authority to order audits. Moore could create documentation. Webb provided technical support. They created a pattern. Medications signed out under Laura's credentials. Discrepancies in controlled substance counts during her shifts. Documentation timing that seemed suspicious. They planted evidence in her locker, empty medication vials. They created bank deposits in her account from untraceable sources, making it look like she'd sold diverted medications. They made sure the evidence would be found during a routine audit, made sure it would be investigated thoroughly, made sure Laura wouldn't be able to explain it away. "Are we sure about this?" Webb asked one final time. "We're sure," Torres said. "This is how we fix the system. Laura's sacrifice will save hundreds of people." They initiated the audit. The evidence was found exactly as planned. NCIs investigated, found exactly what the 5 reformers had planted, built a case against Laura that looked airtight. Laura was arrested and charged with theft, diversion, and falsification of records. She maintained her innocence. "I didn't steal anything. I don't know how this evidence appeared. Someone is framing me." But she couldn't prove it. The evidence was too perfect, the case too strong. She was convicted. 5 years confinement, dishonorable discharge, loss of rank and benefits. The 5 reformers watched her conviction with satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. The 5 reformers made sure Laura's case became public, leaked information to media, contacted congressional staffers, created pressure for broader investigation. Navy nurse convicted of massive medication theft. How did system failures allow this? Media coverage focused on the questions the reformers wanted asked. How could a nurse steal medications for months without detection? Why wasn't there better oversight? What system failures allowed this to happen? Congress demanded answers, held hearings, called the 5 reformers to testify as expert witnesses. Torres testified. Commander Bennett's theft was possible because of systemic failures, inadequate pharmacy oversight, insufficient staffing that prevented proper monitoring, lack of accountability in medication handling procedures. Chen testified. This case reveals deep problems in naval medical facilities. We need comprehensive reforms to prevent this from happening again. Nash, Moore, and Webb all testified similarly, each pushing specific reforms, each using Laura's case as evidence of system failure. Congress was receptive. "This is unacceptable. We need immediate action to fix these system failures." The Navy was forced to respond, appointed a commission to review medical facility operations, implemented new oversight procedures, increased staffing, created accountability mechanisms, everything the 5 reformers had been requesting for years, all approved within 6 months. Because of the scandal, the reforms were real, comprehensive, effective. They fixed the broken system, prevented medication errors, improved patient safety, protected staff from burnout. Hundreds of patients were protected by the reforms. Hundreds of staff members benefited, all built on the deliberate destruction of Laura Bennett. Commander Jennifer Webb watched the reforms being implemented, saw the improvements, knew they were saving lives, but she couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about Laura serving 5 years in prison for crimes she didn't commit, couldn't escape the knowledge that they'd deliberately destroyed an innocent woman. She met with Torres. "We destroyed her. She's serving 5 years for something we fabricated, and hundreds of people are being protected by the reforms we forced through. Her sacrifice mattered. She didn't choose to sacrifice. We chose for her. That's right. We made the hard choice that fixed a broken system. We did what was necessary. What if she finds out? What if someone discovers we framed her? No one will discover it. We were careful. The evidence looks legitimate. And even if someone suspected, the reforms are already in place. They can't be undone." But Webb couldn't accept that. 3 years after Laura's conviction, she broke. She went to the Navy IG, confessed everything. "We framed Commander Bennett. All 5 of us. We planted evidence, created false documentation, fabricated the entire case. She's innocent." The Navy Inspector General investigated Webb's confession. Initially skeptical, it seemed impossible that 5 senior officers would conspire to frame an innocent person, but Webb provided details, access codes, meeting dates, documentation of how they'd planted evidence, timeline of the conspiracy. The IG investigated, found evidence supporting Webb's confession, Torres's administrative access to pharmacy systems during the time evidence was planted. Fingerprints on medication vials found in Laura's locker. Chen had handled them during evidence, planting Moore's digital signature on falsified documentation created before the audit. Bank transfer records showing the evidence money came from an account. Nash controlled the IG, confronted each of them. Initially they denied everything. Then Torres broke. Yes, we framed Commander Bennett. We did it deliberately, to force reforms that the Navy had been blocking for 5 years. You destroyed an innocent woman's career. We fixed a broken system that was destroying hundreds of people. Patient deaths were being covered up. Nurses were burning out under impossible conditions. Medication errors were constant. We filed reports for 5 years. Nothing changed. So you manufactured a scandal. We created a crisis that forced the Navy to act, and it worked. Look at the reforms that were implemented. Look at the lives saved. Look at the improved patient care. All of that happened because of Laura Bennett's case. Laura Bennett is innocent, serving 5 years for crimes you fabricated. Yes, one person's sacrifice to save a system. The other 3, Chan, Nash, and Moore, gave similar statements. They weren't ashamed. They believed they'd done the right thing. Sometimes reform requires sacrifice. Chen said, we chose Laura because she was isolated enough to not fight back effectively. We knew it would destroy her, but we also knew it would save hundreds of others. That wasn't your decision to make. Someone had to make it. The system was broken. The Navy wouldn't fix it. We fixed it. Laura had served 3 years of her 5-year sentence when the IG completed their investigation. She was called to a meeting. Commander Bennett, we have new information about your case. Evidence has emerged that you were deliberately framed by 5 senior officers who manufactured the case against you. Laura felt shock, then confusion, then rage. What? The IG explained everything. The 5 reformers' frustration with system failures, their decision to create a manufactured scandal, their systematic framing of Laura, their success in forcing reforms. You were chosen because you were isolated and respected. They believed your case would create enough pressure to force change, and it did. The reforms implemented after your conviction have significantly improved patient care and staff safety. They destroyed my life to force political change. Yes, and the reforms. Are they working? Yes. Patient safety incidents have decreased 40%. Medication errors are down 60%. Staff burnout has decreased significantly. The reforms have been extremely successful. Laura processed this, so they were right. My sacrifice was worth it. That's not for us to judge. What we know is, you were innocent. You were deliberately framed. Your conviction is being overturned. You're being fully exonerated. What happens to them? They're being charged with conspiracy, fabrication of evidence, obstruction of justice, and deprivation of civil rights. They'll likely receive significant prison sentences. Laura felt a strange emptiness. She'd spent 3 years fighting her conviction, believing she was the victim of a mistake or corruption. Now she learned she'd been a calculated sacrifice by people who believed they were heroes. The 5 reformers were tried together. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of the conspiracy. Webb's confession, digital records, physical evidence of planted materials, but the defense didn't deny the conspiracy. Instead, they argued justification. Yes, my clients framed Commander Bennett, their attorney said. They admit that. But consider what they were trying to accomplish. Naval Hospital San Diego was failing. Patients were dying. Staff were burning out. The system was broken. For 5 years, these dedicated officers tried to fix the system through proper channels. They filed reports, made requested investigations. Nothing worked. The Navy ignored every attempt at reform. So they made a difficult decision. Create a crisis dramatic enough to force change. They chose Commander Bennett, deliberately unframed her. They created a scandal, and it worked. The reforms implemented after Commander Bennett's conviction have saved lives, prevented medication errors, protected staff, made the system safer for everyone. One person was sacrificed, but hundreds have been protected. The prosecution countered. The defendants had no right to destroy an innocent person's life, regardless of their motives. They fabricated evidence. They secured a wrongful conviction. They sent an innocent woman to prison for 5 years. That's not reform. That's conspiracy and injustice. The judge instructed the jury. The defendant's intentions are irrelevant. What matters is whether they committed the crimes charged. Did they conspire to frame Commander Bennett? Did they fabricate evidence? Did they obstruct justice? The jury deliberated for 2 days, found all 5 guilty on all charges. Sentencing: each received 8 years confinement, dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all pay and benefits. They stood in court accepting their sentences without visible regret. Torres made a statement: "I don't regret what we did. We fixed a broken system. Laura Bennett's sacrifice saved hundreds of people. I'd make the same choice again." The judge responded coldly: "You had no right to make that choice. Commander Bennett's life wasn't yours to sacrifice. Your conviction of righteousness doesn't excuse your crimes." Laura was fully exonerated, rank restored, record cleared, received 3 years of back pay plus compensation for wrongful conviction. But she felt confused rather than vindicated. She visited the hospital where she'd worked, saw the reforms in action, talked to nurses who told her, "The changes after your case made our jobs sustainable. We're not burning out anymore. We can provide safe patient care." She reviewed patient safety data, saw the dramatic improvements: medication errors down 60%, safety incidents down 40%, staff satisfaction up significantly. The reforms were real. The improvements were substantial. Lives had been saved because she'd been framed. She met with Sarah Chun's lawyer before Chun's incarceration. "Did you know I'd be exonerated eventually?" "No, we assumed you'd serve the full 5 years and be released with a felony conviction. We didn't expect Webb to confess. That wasn't part of the plan." "So you were planning to let me serve 5 years and carry that conviction forever?" "Yes, we believed it was worth it. One person's sacrifice to fix a system that was failing hundreds. That wasn't your decision to make. Someone had to make it. The system was broken. The Navy wouldn't fix it voluntarily. We forced them to fix it by destroying me, by creating a crisis. Yes, you were the catalyst, but the reforms were necessary. Look at the data. Look at how many people have been protected." Laura felt sick. "You're not sorry." "I'm sorry you were hurt, but I'm not sorry we did it. The system is better now. That matters. To you, not to me." Laura struggled with a question that had no good answer. Was her destruction justified? Objectively, the reforms worked. Hundreds of patients received better care. Hundreds of staff members worked in safer conditions. The system that had been failing for years was fixed. Her 3 years in prison had resulted in improvements that would last decades. Thousands of people would benefit from reforms that happened because of her case. But she'd been deliberately sacrificed, without her knowledge, without her consent. 5 people had decided her life was worth less than the system changes. He contacted a philosophy professor who specialized in ethics. Dr. Marcus Webb explained the situation from a utilitarian perspective. Webb said, what they did might be justified. One person suffered, hundreds were protected. Net positive outcome. But from a rights-based perspective, they violated your fundamental rights. You had a right not to be framed, not to be imprisoned for crimes you didn't commit. That right doesn't disappear just because violating it produces good outcomes. So which perspective is correct? That's the eternal question in ethics. Can the ends justify the means? Can one person be deliberately sacrificed for the greater good? There's no universal answer. What would you say if you were me? I'd say, the fact that good came from evil doesn't make the evil less evil. The reformers committed crimes. They destroyed an innocent person. Yes, the outcome was positive, but the method was wrong, and they should be held accountable, which they are. But does that make the reforms less valuable? No. The reforms are good regardless of how they came about. You can acknowledge that the system improvements matter, while also acknowledging that you were wronged. Laura left more confused than before, because both things were true. The reforms mattered, and she'd been wronged, and she couldn't figure out how to reconcile those truths. Laura attended a patient safety conference where the San Diego reforms were being presented as a model. She listened to speakers discuss the improvements. During the break, a woman approached her. "You're Commander Bennett, aren't you?" "Yes, I'm Rachel Morrison. My mother was a patient at San Diego 2 years ago. After the reforms were implemented, she had cancer, was in the ICU for 3 weeks. The nurses told me that before the reforms, her level of care wouldn't have been possible. Understaffing would have meant mistakes. But because of the changes, the better nurse-to-patient ratios, the improved medication protocols, she received excellent care. She lived 6 more months with dignity." Laura didn't know what to say. "I know what happened to you," Rachel continued. "I know you were framed. I know you spent 3 years in prison for something you didn't do, and I don't know if this means anything, but my mother's last months mattered. She was able to spend time with family, wasn't in constant pain, died peacefully, because of reforms that happened because of your case. I didn't choose to be part of those reforms. I know, and what they did to you was wrong. But I wanted you to know that real people were helped. My mother was one of hundreds. Rachel left. Laura sat alone, processing what she'd heard. The reforms had saved Rachel's mother, had given her 6 months of dignity, would save others in the future, built on Laura's deliberate destruction. Laura was 50 years old. 8 years since her conviction, 5 since her exoneration. The 5 reformers were in prison serving their 8-year sentences. She'd rebuilt her career, worked as a nursing educator, taught about medical ethics and system failures. She told her story to students. I was deliberately framed by 5 officers who believed fixing a broken system justified destroying an innocent person. They were wrong to do that. They're serving prison sentences. But the reforms they forced through their actions, those reforms have saved lives. So were they wrong? A student asked. Yes, absolutely. They had no right to frame me, no right to destroy my career and freedom. The fact that good came from their actions doesn't make their actions right. But would you undo the reforms if you could? Laura paused. It was the question she'd been asking herself for 5 years. No, I wouldn't undo the reforms. Hundreds of people have been protected. Thousands more will be protected in the future. Those lives matter. So you're glad it happened? No, I'm not glad I was framed and imprisoned, but I'm glad the system was fixed. Both things are true, and they're in tension with each other, forever. Another student. If the 5 reformers asked for your forgiveness, would you give it? I don't know. Part of me says they were villains who destroyed my life. Part of me says they were desperate reformers who made an impossible choice. I haven't figured out which part is right. Maybe both are. Laura visited Michael Torres in prison, 5 years into his 8-year sentence. Why did you want to see me? Torres asked. I don't know. Maybe to understand why you thought my destruction was acceptable. The system was broken. Patients were dying. Staff were burning out. We tried for 5 years to fix it through proper channels. Nothing worked. So we created a crisis that forced change. You chose me. Yes, we chose you because you were isolated. We knew you wouldn't have the support to fight back effectively. We knew your case would create the right kind of pressure. You destroyed my life. We sacrificed your life for hundreds of others. I know that sounds cold, but that's what we did. And the reforms worked. Patient care improved dramatically. Lives were saved. Do you regret it? Torres thought carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the Navy wouldn't fix the system voluntarily. I regret that we had to destroy an innocent person to force change. But do I regret making the decision? No, because the alternative was letting the broken system continue killing people. You're not sorry. I'm sorry you suffered. But I'm not sorry we forced the reforms. Those were the only 2 options. Let the system continue failing, or create a crisis that forced change. We chose the crisis. You chose to make me the crisis. Yes, and I'd make that choice again, because the alternative was worse. Laura left the prison feeling no closer to resolution. Torres was sincere, believed he'd done the right thing, would do it again. How do you reconcile with someone who destroyed you deliberately, and doesn't regret it because the outcome justified the means? Laura was 60. The 5 reformers had been released from prison. The reforms at San Diego had spread to other naval medical facilities. Patient care had improved across the system. Hundreds of lives saved. Thousands protected. All traced back to the scandal that forced change. All built on Laura's deliberate destruction. She received a letter from Torres. Commander Bennett, I'm writing to tell you that I still believe what we did was necessary. But I've had 8 years to think about it, from your perspective. And I understand now that we committed a terrible injustice against you, regardless of the outcome. I won't ask for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see the wrong we did to you, even though I still believe the reforms mattered. Laura didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. She'd been a manufactured martyr, created by people who believed themselves heroes, who committed crimes to force reforms, who destroyed one innocent person to save hundreds. And the worst part, they'd been right about the outcome. The reforms did save lives. The system was better. But that didn't make what they'd done less evil. Both truths existed, forever in tension, forever unresolvable. She'd been sacrificed, and the sacrifice had mattered. She'd been wronged, and the wrong had produced good. and she'd spend the rest of her life unable to reconcile those contradictions.